Nora panicked. Did they know Carl? Did they know she came with a vampire hunter? With the intent to kill them? Laura laughed. No need to be so guilty. It's a classic tale, is it not? Star-crossed lovers, doomed for conflict and strife despite their love. I think there might be an overstatement. I am fairly certain it's one-sided, said Nora, smiling nervously. I suppose the whole has a duty to kill you thing is getting in the way, said the Lord. Nora opened her mouth, then considered. Yeah, can't help but be a bit bitter about it. Wait, if he's always trying to kill you, then how did any love grow? Asked Dolph. Dolph, darling, isn't it obvious? A man of dedication and wit chases you to the ends of the earth. That kind of passion. Laura's eyes glinted dangerously. Dolph rolled his. The conversation naturally turned to their own, seemingly average romance, but the passion with which they told their tale warmed the heart. Nora found herself liking them, and guilt grew in her. The night wore on. A man was brought before them. Harlorn held the chained man in his single hand. Rufus the Ruffian, Harlorn introduced the man. He handed the Lord papers sealed in wax. His eyes lanced over them quickly. He nodded. Light dinner, my dear. This one is a simple thief and scoundrel. A knife took 3 small bowls of blood from the man. He was quickly whisked away. The Lord and Lady swung their bowls up and drank so swiftly and greedily as to be like pigs. Nora stared in horror at the blood. She felt sick at the very thought of partaking in the crimson liquid. Yet her stomach contorted in hunger, and drool slipped from her mouth. The Lord and Lady seemed occupied in enjoying their fill, but the fox watched her curiously. Sick, Nora drank. She wanted to vomit. It was so sweet as to taste foul. She grit her teeth and refused to part her lips. She stared icily at Harlorn. You were so polite before, yet now you stare as a woman tries to enjoy her drink. Harlorn smiled. It pleases me that our earlier interaction was so favorable to you. It saddens me that I have squandered such good fortune. I must apologize, and promise not to fail you again. She turned and faced the Lord and Lady. Nora, dear, have you ever noticed how different people taste? Asked the lady. No. She could only remember one sort of blood. When she was starved and Carl or Terran fed her, she could never remember the flavor. Another vampire's blood was thick, hearty, and bitter. It was substantially more filling. Tragic. This man has a hearty, warm taste, if a bit on the gritty side, said Lord Dolph. Oh, yes, quite a nostalgic flavor. Nora waited for her stomach to stop twisting. Drool dripped down Laura's chin. Oh, I would so love some more. Has this man been taxed yet? Perhaps we should savor such a thing for later in the year. No point in rushing it, said the Lord. You sure? The lady asked, flicking a line of drool off of Dolph's chin. Given the looks the two were giving each other. I would like to retire. Traveling here was long and hard, said Nora. Harlorn, Laura said, eyes still locked on her husband's. Take darling Nora to a guest room. The fox asked the hounds, Have you seen a hawk? Terran and Carl lurked in taverns and inns. Few had chosen to winter here. Many were locals, rough men with hard hands, tired and brutal in their ways, pretty lasses and robust matrons. A good, hearty people. A warm and welcome hearth from the winter chill.
Gives me the jeebies. Paid my taxes in coin, not blood, like a right proper man.
The wiry, grizzled man said.
Are there others like you? Asked Carl.
Yes, sir. Just gotta see who pays in blood and who don't. God raised us above them animals, so we ain't need to pay in blood.
Carl nodded. Thank you.
This is hopeful. Seems that the dream looms aren't as clean as they would like to be.
Hard to be clean as a monster, Terran.
Maybe impossible. They emerged into the streets. Carl's head snapped up from the icy cobbles. He tensed and lunged forward. Terran stumbled as he turned too quickly. They ran down the street and into side alleys. Carl had seen something, and Terran followed best he could. The hovel was boarded up crudely for winter. A scream came from within. A single, shoveled path led up to it. Carl drew his blade and burst through the door. Terran crowded in behind him. A corpse with shocked, dead eyes stared up from the two halves of a split skull. Terran's mouth gaped and he turned around. "Murder! Murder!" screeched a woman. The earlier scream must have brought her. "Ma'am," started Terran, but the woman ran. A couple rough locals were peeking from between shutters and emerging from their homes. Dark expressions covered their faces. The woman continued to cry, "Guards! Guards! Murder! Murder!" "Sir, what do we do?" asked Terran. Carl was examining the wooden boards that covered one of the hovel's windows.
That's how he did it.
"Carl!"
What's the matter?
The woman returned, crying, "That's him! That man was standing over Harold with his sword drawn." An angular face grinned. The ginger spoke.
Savage as always, Carl.
Harlorn, how's your damned hand?
Cold. But I'm assuming you must know that I have to arrest you.
I don't think that makes any bloody sense. A brigand and a murderer arresting a knight? Goddamn insane.
The fox shrugged.
The dream looms seem to think men can change, can conquer their fates.
The locals looked with violence on the vampire hunters.
"Ah, what about the young man?"
asked the fox. The woman shrugged.
"He was shocked, I think, just like me. But he was so big, and with the bloody mess behind him, I panicked. His blade was undrawn."
Another witness, then.
Let's make this quick. A trial by combat should be good enough. Let God decide if I'm guilty.
Oh, the new lord and lady are not fond of such a practice. Alas, a proper trial will be held with them.
Carl sighed. Fine. I will let this farce run through.
The fox grinned.
Your sword?
I'll give it to you for your ugly head.
Harlorn's eyes narrowed.
I suppose you have that privilege.
Knights stood in full regalia to the flanks of Carl. The travel-worn man looked strange to Terran. Somehow he seemed all the more dangerous for the wear on his arms and armor. Terran himself was a witness along with the woman and several men. Harlorn stood behind the lord and lady. The couple looked famished. The woman was huge with child. That mere fact disturbed Terran. It would be best if the child was born first, but what to do with it? Hopefully Carl had a plan. Nora stood to the other side of the lord and lady. She looked shocked. The men backed the woman's story. They had seen both of them running onto the scene. His presence behind Carl discredited his testimony, as he was seen as a co-conspirator, especially since he hadn't seen the man they chased. Only Carl had.
I saw a villain, so I chased him. I heard a scream, so I had to be ready for anything. Oh, and I have no motive. Why would I kill this man?
A castle guard visiting a woman. You attacked him while she was out. You're a vampire hunter. It's obvious what you're here for, replied Harlorn.
Drool ran down the lord and lady's chins. Nora sighed.
We find you guilty of conspiracy to assassinate nobility and murder,
declared Laura. Nora moved first. The sword was overbuilt to handle its own weight and length. Her wrists broke as she slammed the blade into the knight's helm. The helm collapsed, and the man hurtled away. Carl grabbed the other man, flanking him. Taryn performed a Mordhau against the knight who guarded the entrance to the room. The knight was dazed and stumbled back. Taryn was relentless, but the armor prevented him from moving on quickly. A parry and a feint left the lord caught off guard, only for Carl's war sword to be blocked by Harlorn's. The fox held the longsword in one hand of flesh and a second of steel. Nora struck at Dulf, and the man caught the blade in a way to shatter wrists. Laura tackled Nora to the ground before Nora could kill the still limp-wristed lord. Harlorn and Carl traded a fury of blows. Nora was faced with the snarling, drooling Laura.
Why would you save him when he wants to kill us? Why betray your own kind for a childish love?
Nora's face twisted in disgust.
You eat people. I eat monsters.
Nora's teeth clamped onto Laura's neck, but the older woman did the same. The lady's blood slowly thickened as they mixed. Then Laura was ash. Nora's right breast flared in pain.
Sorry, Nora. I misjudged the force, said Taryn.
You bastard! Dulf screamed. His head was split, and the war sword tore down his neck and shattered his collarbone. Taryn whipped his blade up and thrust again. The blade was batted aside by the lord's longsword. Nora scrambled in the ash. Carl ripped the blade free. The lord struck, fast, hard, recklessly. Taryn leapt to the side, and the vampire's leap brought him too far. Carl struck the man's head from his shoulders. Nora, wake up! He cried. She scrambled up and leapt. She choked as she fed. They later found the child dead in the ash that had been its mother.